This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. In the words of the immortal AC/DC, it is harder than it looks. These interviews will give you a glimpse into the lives of the artists that we've sung along with, danced and rocked out to. Some go deep into their past and others celebrate their recent releases. But all of them show that regardless of who you are, it's always a long way to the top. In the late 70s, Paul Cashmere began working in radio 1 week before the passing of Elvis. Little did he know that he was about to embark on a track that would see him speaking with some of the greatest rock artists of our time. There are very few artists Paul hasn't spoken with, and even less who don't know Paul by reputation as one of Australia's most foremost authorities in music. From TV appearances on Rockwiz to Hey Hey It's Saturday, Paul is the go-to music guy and has created Noise 11, the music news Bible. I'm honoured to chat with Paul Cashmere on this episode of Long Way to the Top. And welcome to the program, Paul Cashmere. How are you, mate?
Hey, hello, Shane. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, likewise. I've been a massive follower of your website and your career in music, you know, as a music journo. So I thought that I would jump on and have a chat with you about your life in music, because you love it, right?
Well, I've been doing it for a long, long time, and thank you for using the word journalist, because that's something I'm absolutely not qualified to be. My background was in radio, and I went from radio to digital media, and somewhere in that mash-up of careers, I started to get called a journalist, and I thought it was pretty funny because I've got a lot of friends who really are journalists, and I know how hard they had to work and study to get to where they were. So, no, I won't rob that title because I respect too many people who really have earned the title.
So there are journalists and then there are music journos, which is a different thing.
Well, and herein lies, I think it was the Frank Zappa quote where he said, music journalism is people who can't writing about people who can't sing for people who can't read. That just about sums it up, doesn't it?
Pretty much. So you started your career in radio, and that was back in the 70s.
1977, I was fresh out of school, so I can honestly say I've never had a real job, which is, a fantastic thing to be able to say in your 60s. But no, straight out of school into radio. I was working at 2AD in Armidale.
Yeah.
And back in the day, that was when you did your rounds and started off in the country and went from a small station to a slightly bigger station to a slightly bigger station. And over the years, worked your way up the ranks. So 2AD Armidale 1977, 2ST Nowra in 1978. To 2NM in Muswellbrook in 1980-81, down to Eon FM, which is now Triple M, in 1981, over to Fox FM, then to 2WL 1984, where I stayed for 9 years and became a program director and did all the management stuff. Back down to Melbourne to work for Austereo. That was in 1991, and 1995 set up my own company in digital media, which I've been doing ever since.
Yeah, big career. And, I guess when you talk about radio, this was the heyday of radio back in the 70s and 80s, right?
Radio was a completely different beast then. In every individual city, you had an individual program. There was no syndication with the exception of maybe American Top 40 on the radio. But effectively, if you turned on the radio at 2NM in Muswellbrook or 2AD in Armidale or 2WL in Wollongong, 2ST in Nowra, you were hearing locals actually on the air and broadcasting live. So, not only was there virtually no syndication, there was also virtually no pre-recording back then.
Yeah, gosh. And you brought back a memory there of American Top 40. How many times did we listen to that? And back then, they arrived at the station as a vinyl record.
Correct, and they were all flown in out of the United States each week. And the guy who started American Top 40 and eventually sold his business to Grace Gibson, who, I don't even know if they've still got access to all of that. But the guy who started bringing American Top 40 into Australia was a Qantas airline steward who used to be on the American route every week. He would go from Sydney to Los Angeles. When he was in Los Angeles, he would go around, pick up the vinyl editions, and then bring them back to Australia, distribute them to the radio stations, and then repeat it the next week. So not only was he the distributor of the program in the early days, he was also the postman.
Yeah, and it must have been an expensive operation though to, put it onto vinyl. And I remember seeing one of the, I think it was Rick D's Weekly Top 40, and there was a side one, and then they went, okay, we have to put side 4 on side 1 because you can't flip it over to side 2 halfway through the show.
Yeah, there were a couple of old live albums like that. I think Chicago might have had a live album like that. I think a Led Zeppelin album, which was a double album. You had side 1, side 4, side 2, and side 3, just so you, can work it at radio, which is quite amazing. See, they thought of everything back then.
They did. Nowadays, though, digital, bang, it's there instantaneously. It's changed a lot.
You can have a song recorded and available to everyone within minutes these days.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, we see live performances. There was a Foo Fighters live performance that I was watching on Saturday morning. You
mentioned off air that before, when you first started in radio, that you started the week that Elvis died.
Pretty amazing time to be beginning in radio because it was early August 1977. Elvis actually had a song in the top 40 at the time, a track called Way Down, which was quite the inappropriate song to be the song that you have as a hit at the time that you die.
Yeah.
But I got to play Elvis Presley on the radio when he actually had a hit in the chart and when he was alive. So it was a very, very interesting time. Elvis died a week later. He was, was he 44 years old when he passed away?
Oh, now you've got me.
Like about 20 years younger than what I am now.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was fresh out of school, 19 years old, working on the radio for the very first time. And when Elvis died at age 44, I'm sitting there thinking on the radio, why is everybody getting so upset about this old guy dying? He's 44. But, the wisdom of youth, huh?
Yeah. We just recently went through that again with Tina Turner, and I guess this is the beauty about working in radio is that at 5 o'clock in the morning we get the word that Tina Turner had passed away, and then suddenly we're going through and changing playlists and putting together any possible interview that we may have done with her or with someone that knew her.
Yeah. And, I recall 1980 when John Lennon had passed away when he was assassinated. I was working at 2FT in Nowra. The news came through late in the afternoon, Australian time, that John had died, and I was about to go on air. I think it was on air at 7 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever time it was back then. But what we did, we just opened up the lines and we took calls from listeners for the next 6 hours on the radio. And it was just, it was a very heart-wrenching moment, but it was also a beautiful moment in that I think the beauty of what local radio can do is unite communities. And, that's one example of, just the town of Nowra is about 70,000 people living in that place at that time. But, it picked up surrounding areas such as, Berry to the north and Ulladulla to the south. But we were just bombarded with phone calls for 6 hours on local radio, just talking about something that had happened on the other side of the world. And it was just a very touching 6 hours of radio, but also a very special moment for me.
And, of course, all of our favourite artists now from the 70s and 60s, well, it's pretty much, one every couple of days that's passing away. I mean, you must look back now and go, with all of these artists that you may have interviewed during your time, and they're passing away.
Well, I think they're of a certain age now, and we've never had a music era that has aged like the rock era has aged.
Yeah.
When you go back and think about The Who and the song My Generation, the lyrics, Hope I Die Before I Get Old. No one expected that they would still be performing rock and roll in their 70s, let alone 80s.
Yeah.
And, you've got the Rolling Stones, Mick Jagger, Paul McCartney, Bob Dylan, at 83, 84 years old now. And these people are still going out and they're still performing and they're still sounding pretty good.
Yeah.
Just recently in Melbourne, I got to see Buddy Guy at age 86 on stage, and he just blew artists that were like 1/4 of his age off the stage. It was just incredible to see people like that. And yes, I've been very privileged to see a lot of those people over the decades, but also get to talk to a lot of them as well.
Yeah, yeah. And look, I had the pleasure of chatting with one of my heroes, John Ilsley, the other day. And I was completely starstruck, and but he was the nicest guy. Do you still get when you chat with artists after all of these years of interviewing artists? Do you still get the butterflies?
Oh, absolutely. And like what I do, I make sure I've researched every possible thing I can research with any artist I'm talking to, and whether it's a new artist or an old artist. But particularly, you've got to keep yourself together because you have to be professional about the whole thing, and you have to know your stuff. Just last week, I got to talk to Nick Mason of Pink Floyd, and to talk to somebody of that caliber. You want to make sure that you've got your facts together.
Yeah.
My most memorable interview that I ever did was with George Harrison in the mid-1990s. And he was an absolute charm to talk to. I don't think I've talked to anyone nicer than the hour I got to spend with George Harrison back in the mid-1990s. And what an incredible interview. He did so few interviews in the years before he died. And that was one of the interviews that was cited quite regularly on broadcasts such as CNN at the time of his passing. And, it was amazing to think that, you're sitting there and you're doing an interview with somebody. You might not be thinking too much about it because, you're going to be doing another one next week and then another two the week after that and so forth and so on along the ways. But what you're doing at every interview is documenting a moment in history.
Yeah.
And if that's something that people can look back on and take notes and you've actually captured that moment in history, that becomes educational for all the years to come.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's absolutely correct. And you've had some great interviews across the years, and obviously George Harrison is your favorite. Has there been an interview where I remember interviewing Scott Stapp from Creed, and the week after I interviewed him, he suddenly went like crazy and holed up in the hotel, right? And, thought that the CIA was out to get him. And I started thinking to myself, did I say something during the interview that I shouldn't have?
Obviously.
Obviously, it was my fault. Has anything like that ever happened to you where you've done this interview and things just go sideways?
Look, I've had a few over the years that, for whatever reason, the artist was just not in the mood or whatever. They're told they have to do these things for media, and it just hasn't worked out. I recall one with Warren Zevon, where he just didn't want to do the interview. It was just that simple. There was a very funny one with Ozzy Osbourne, where to go back to what had happened the week earlier. I was in Sydney and I met Sharon Osbourne's mother and father.
Yeah.
And Sharon, her father was Don Arden, who was this amazing, incredible record executive who started Jet Records, managed the Electric Light Orchestra. He was like the Michael Gudinski of his time. And he was in Sydney for whatever reason. I was invited to go up and do an interview with him, which I did. Anyway, the following week I had an interview with Ozzy, and the first thing I said to him was, I was in Sydney last week and met your father-in-law. And, you want me to say what Ozzy said? Have you got a dump button for me? Don't you talk to me about that. And I'll let you fill in the word.
Oh, dear. And at that point you go, oh, dear, there's just no coming back from that.
Well, you got to sort of throw the line out into the water and just hope that you can fish something back in at that point.
Yeah. Now, you also, I read that you had done a little bit of a stint on Hey Hey It's Saturday, and I was talking with Gavin Wood, earlier as well on the show, and he sort of recalled it as a lot of fun times. Was it a fun time for you?
It was. Well, it's an interesting period. I just started at Eon FM, and that was when Hey Hey It's Saturday was still in the morning slot.
Right.
And so I had finished on Midnight to Dawn. I had to stay awake and get over to Channel 9 to do a segment that they had, which was called Jukebox Jury.
Yeah.
And they just, grabbed three people, put you on a panel, and they would play songs to you, and you'd have to, tell them what you thought of the song. Now, luckily for me, because that was the very first time I'd ever been on television, so I was as nervous as you would imagine, particularly being on a show that popular and a national show at that.
Yeah.
But luckily for me, the other guest that was on the panel at the same time was Mark Gillespie, the late, great singer-songwriter, who was around for a few albums in the 1980s, recorded for Glenn Wheatley's Wheatley Records back then.
Yeah.
And Mark, as nervous as I was, he might have had, let's say, some substances. So he ended up being a lot more, shall we say, entertaining than I was, and that took the pressure off me.
Look at him, not me.
Yeah.
Now you retained. I mean, you obviously you've interviewed a lot of people. You've have a lot of knowledge, and your website noise11.com has it's a wealth of information. So any music news goes up there. Are you like Glenn A. Baker, where you just retain every little bit of information?
I will forget everything we've talked about 5 minutes from now.
I was wondering about that. How did you go on Rockwiz then?
Rockwiz. Oh, well, should I tell the Rockwiz secret? Maybe that might mean I'll get disqualified. Yeah, see, when was that? That would have been about 2007, I think.
I think it was around then, yeah.
A friend of mine, Mary, who is a well-known photographer in Melbourne. She rang me and my wife. She said, do you want to come along to the ESPY tonight? I've got tickets, I've got a table for Rockwiz, and we're going to go to Rockwiz, and, it'll be a lot of fun, and we can sit in the audience and just watch.
Yeah.
So anyway, we go along, then we're sitting at our table, and Mary says, with Rockwiz, if you're ever selected, all you have to do is hit the buzzer as soon as they ask the question, even if you don't know what the question is going to be, because Julia always then continues the entire question.
Oh, right.
Right? And it's all about, first in with the buzzer. So I'm thinking, that's pretty good. If I ever get on the show, I'll do something like that. Lo and behold, our table won, and then they nominated me to go up. I was on the show, and I'm thinking, I'm gonna test you out, Mary, with your theory there.
Theory.
So Julia would start her question. What was the? I'd be in, and she'd, Paul, and then she'd finish the question, and then that was mine to have. So I basically was able to go in and grab all the questions, and it didn't matter if I didn't know them, because I'd already been in for so many.
Yeah.
But if that episode is streaming, or you can go back and have a look at it, just have a look at my hand on the buzzer.
I'm going to go back and watch this now just to see.
That was the secret of my success.
Aha. There you go. There you go. So, just in terms of, I know you talked about George Harrison, but was there a favourite interview? I mean, could you say that your favourite interview was so and so? I mean, because they're all different, right?
They're all different, but when it comes to people that you're a big fan of, so George Harrison absolutely is the favourite interview that I've ever done. There was a Mick Jagger in there at one point, but I was very nervous. It was actually a face-to-face while I was in Sydney, and I think I was just too nervous to talk to Mick at that point. So that was a bit of a disaster. I'd done a Bon Scott one just prior to him passing away. Actually came to Australia on a holiday. They were living in the UK at that point.
Yeah.
It came down to Australia over that summer period for a holiday. I had a call from Peter Riccobona, who was running Albert's Music at the time. This is when I was at 2ST in Nowra, and she said, Bon's in town for a holiday. If you'd like to talk to him, I'll arrange an interview for you. So I got to talk to Bon just weeks before he passed away, which was a very special moment. But that was back in the day when radio stations recorded everything on reel-to-reel tape.
Yeah.
And those reel-to-reel tapes, for 1980 radio, that was very expensive, the reel-to-reel tape. So nothing was archived.
No.
So as soon as it went to air, you erased the tape and you recorded something else over it. So that interview, it went to air on 2ST in Nowra once and was never heard again.
Oh, wow. Have you tried looking for it? I mean, surely someone has recorded it somewhere.
Well, again, 1980, people didn't have, cassette players and, I guess they had cassette players, but, the fact that people just didn't have the easy access that they had with the digital technologies to collect pieces of content. So, no, that would long be gone.
Wow. Well, what's your obviously, with the rise of records again and vinyl again, we've come full circle. Do you listen to vinyl now?
I've still got a lot of vinyl from my early days. My format of choice is still the CD because I've got a very good sound system and I like to listen to things loud. And while I've got a very good turntable as well, I do not go by the theory that vinyl sounds better than CD. The CD, to me, to my ears, is always the format of choice.
Yeah.
But there is a better format of choice, and that is the Blu-ray. And unfortunately, very few albums have been released on Blu-ray, but when they have been, they're absolutely gobsmackingly amazing to listen to. I've got the Beatles' Abbey Road album on Blu-ray, because that came in the box set. Sgt. Pepper is also on Blu-ray. That was part of the box set. I've got a couple of Pink Floyd things on Blu-ray, Dark Side of the Moon, that was included in the 40th anniversary box set, and no doubt the 50th anniversary that just came out.
Yeah.
So, like when you can listen to Blu-ray, it's absolutely incredible. And, particularly with DVD, you can get some amazing value. Funnily enough, just before we started this interview, I've been playing Talking Heads Stop Making Sense on DVD, which I picked up on Amazon for $7.95.
Oh, you know what? I was going to ask what you were listening to. And so is this the new one that they've released?
No, this is the actual original. So I guess they were getting rid of the stock in anticipation of the new one coming through later this year. I think it's being released in August.
Yes.
But, this is the full concert still, with all of the tracks that weren't on the actual live album, including the Talking Heads version of the Tom Tom Club's Genius of Love. That's on there as well.
Wow.
So, some great stuff. And I mean, DVD and 5.1 surround sound. I've got the setup in the lounge room, and I like to crank it up. What can I say?
Yeah, fantastic.
People in the South Bank 3006 postcode have a wonderful time when I'm at home.
Yeah, sorry about that.
I entertain the neighbourhood.
Nice. And any new albums that we should be keeping an ear out for?
Oh, look, there's stuff that's coming through all the time. And, like in my head is always probably the most recent thing that I've been working on. One this morning was the new Lloyd Cole album. He's about to release a new record in a couple of weeks, and he was the last interview that I did this morning, as a matter of fact. So, because of the work I do, I'm constantly listening to whatever is around me. In terms of who, if I'm going to be talking to them, or it might be something that I'm doing a story on, and it just sparks I wouldn't mind going back and listening to that, or whatever. But that tends to be how I listen to new music.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, look, you know what? You've got the best job in the world, in my opinion, and to be able to just have your hobby. You've gone from radio to just music journalism. So,
that word. Yeah. But I can say I've been happily unemployed since 1995.
Nice. Nice.
Well, ever since I left off stereo. I mean, I have not worked for anyone since I left off stereo in 1995. I really am starting to think I am unemployable.
Yeah, well, no, I don't. I think you've got so much talent there, and it's a wonder, that no one sort of picked you up for your own Rockwiz show.
What's that line they say? You've got a face for radio.
There you go.
That's me. Yeah, maybe 40 years ago.
Maybe.
They had the chance when I was on Hey Hey at Saturday, and they blew it.
Thank you for joining me on the show. Really appreciate chatting with you.
Oh, it's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Shane.
Cheers. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Long Way to the Top. Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at the Long Way to the Top podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.